You are listening to 15 Minutes, the show with Osiris Munir, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hey, all my kindreds. How are you out there? What's going on? Let's see. We are out of we just had a full moon in Scorpio. Scorpio is intense. It's a lot going on when Scorpio's around. I don't know how many of you out there believe in this kind of thing, but if you live long enough, you will find out some of these things are very, very true. I want to talk a little bit about, before we introduce our guest today, which is very interesting. We have an interesting guest on board as usual, but I wanted to talk a little bit about supporting the guest and what they do before they come on. And it's about the word action. It's an address, and I love lectures, and I love to study and research. So I'm always trying to find something interesting to read and study. It says to take action is crucial for achieving our goal and making progress in various aspects of our lives. Without action, our ideas and plans remain mere thoughts and dream, and we do not realize their full potential. Action turns ideas into reality. Action transforms thoughts into tangible results. It is the first step towards making our goals and aspirations a reality that creates momentum. When we take action, we create momentum and build the energy needed to keep moving forward. Each small step we take helps to reinforce our environment to our goals and motivates us to keep going. So I wanted to read that to everyone. I know everyone out there where there's a lot going on. We can't expect things to be normal. People don't know where to go. If you know where you stand and you know who you are inside, you won't be confused. Things won't be stuck for you. You'll understand. But it leads me into, first of all, let's make an announcement for our sponsor. Yay! Kevin Pike, Coldwell Banker, Senior Real Estate and Probate Specialist. Co-worker 818-571-1508, a wonderful human being. Kevin Pike, Coldwell Banker, Senior Real Estate and Probate Specialist. 818-571-1508 can meet any of your real estate needs, and I mean anything. And back to now our guest. Today, I have the great pleasure and honor. Not only am I a vet myself, but this person specializes in documentaries. He's a 6-time Emmy Award, Regional Award winner. He is a producer and director. There is a PBS special that I believe it's starting this month in May. It's called, and it's narrated by actor-director Gary Sinise. If you remember Forrest Gump, run, Forrest, run. It's a Lieutenant Dan. It was Lieutenant Dan. Gary Sinise, that's what he's best known for. He's also in the movie Green Mile. He narrates, it's called Miles, Morale, and Memories with Bob Hope, World War II. And in that note, I will bring on our guest today, Tim Gray. Yay. Hey, Tim.
Wow, that was quite the introduction. We just met a little while ago, but it seems like we should be family.
We probably are kindred spirits or something, you know.
Thank you.
Tim, I'm impressed with what you do. Thank you. I thought a few minutes, as I was speaking, it was running through my head. I thought a few minutes about what I said to you before it came on. And I said, you know what, poor Tim, I could see the look on your face like, oh, no, not enough. You know what I mean? And I know people approach you all the time, but we can't help it when you're a humanitarian type guy and you're covering things that touch people's hearts about World War II and Bob Hope. I mean, come on, what are you going to say? But I want to be a part of that train too. So I want you to talk a little bit about the PBS special that I just announced. I want you to talk about, if those of you who don't know Bob Hope, he's going to tell you who he is. Mm-hmm. And let's go. Drum roll, you're on.
Well, if you think Bob Hope today, to put it in the context of today's generation, Bob Hope would be Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, David Letterman. He would be John Mulaney. He would be all of the comedians you would think of. Bob Hope was the first stand-up comedian ever, and it just so happened that he perfected his craft during a world war. And everybody in your audience in some way is tied to World War II, whether it's a grandfather, a great grandfather, a father, an uncle, a brother or sister. There's something in your family that ties you to World War II. So this year is the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, in which 60 million people died. You think about that number, 60 million people died during World War II. That was about 5% of the Earth's population died during World War II. And it was a time when democracy was in peril, and the young men, teenagers, young men, young women on the home front and overseas stepped up to preserve everything that we have today. So that's World War II in about a minute and a half.
And some of the wars, my wonderful kindreds out there that were going on was, I think there was a war on Poland. There was the British War went on, but the biggest one that my parents told us about was the Panama Canal. I think that was that lasted the longest, Tim, was the Panama Canal War.
Yeah, I mean that's not really associated with World War II per se. There were a lot of ships who used the Panama Canal during the war to get through to the Pacific and that area and stuff. But World War II was one of those wars that everybody was caught up in it, whether you were a combatant or a witness or a survivor. It really it straddled Europe, it straddled all of the Pacific. So when you think about a world war, it was the greatest world war in the history of the world, bigger than World War I, which wasn't as global as World War II. But you know, the thing about these men and women who served is there were 16 million Americans who served, and there are only about 60,000 who are still alive with us today. And your audience probably knows some of them. They're the guy down the street who's 99 or 100 years old, or the woman down the street. So it just, you know, it's a time when America came together. We're certainly not in that time right now. And it was a time back then when America came together because we were attacked, and we had to fight people who wanted to take away democracy in the world. And that's how it all came to be. And Bob Hope came to America from England. He became an American citizen during his vaudeville days, and he wanted to fight for America, but President Roosevelt said, "Hey, you're a top 10 movie star. You're the #1 radio star in the country. You're funny. Go do what you do best and entertain the troops." And that's what he did during the war.
So, Tim, a lot of people don't know. I didn't know until I read the wonderful packet that Harlan put together for you. The presentation, so beautifully done. I read about Bob Hope and his fierce determination and intention to support the troops, always traveling, always entertaining. He was a person that a family would call and say, "Did you meet my son? Did you see my father? You know, are they okay?" And I was told and read that he really did get involved and would call them back and say, "Yes, I absolutely remember to talk to them." Was it the fact that there are a lot of entertainers that are veterans that they supported automatically, or was there something which I think was special about Bob Hope to cause him to really go out there and make a name in that whole world of vets?
He was born in the United Kingdom and he grew up in Cleveland. And when he did become an American citizen, he really was just appreciative of the fact of the things that America had given him. And he was very genuine in how he dealt with the men and the women overseas. It was very personal with him. He would talk to them and he would remember their names. A lot of times Marines in the Pacific or a soldier in Europe would hand him a letter and say, "Would you, when you get back to the States, could you go up to LA and deliver this letter to my parents?" And the parents would get a knock at the door, and it would be the #1 radio star in America and a top 10 movie star in America delivering a letter saying, "Your son is okay. I saw him. He came to my show." That meant so much to people on the home front. And he didn't do it. He didn't take cameras with him when he did it. He didn't have photographers with him. He did it because he felt it was part of the relationship that he had with the military during World War II. And it was a very personal and heartfelt relationship because at the end of the day, he just appreciated being an American.
And Tim, how did you come to get this particular project? How did you come to get so many entertainers involved to narrate your documentaries? It pops it, How did that happen for you?
We've just been blessed over the years that most of the people we've asked to narrate our 42 films have said yes. So we've got a wide ranging, voices from Kevin Bacon and Tom Brokaw to Luke Bryan and Darius Rucker to Jim Nance at CBS Sports and Gary Sinise, who both narrate a lot of our films. We've got Keith Morrison at Dateline. We've got, just Matthew Broderick, who played Ferris Bueller. Yeah, he's a great guy. So, we've been very fortunate. Liev Schreiber's another one, a great actor. We've just been very, very, very fortunate. And usually these actors have played in a movie or played in a television show that dealt with the military, or they have somebody in their family who's in the military. So they understand what our nonprofit mission is that whether you're any veteran, it's important that you share your story. Not every story is the glory that came out of World War II. We talk to veterans and they want to talk to us about what it was like to be at the Chosin Reservoir and during the Korean conflict or Vietnam, or the Gulf War, or the War on Terror. Everyone who served this country has a story, and we wanted to focus this year, especially with this 80th anniversary, the end of the war, on a few different topics. One of them being the role that morale plays in combat. And that's what Bob Hope did, and that's what he did during Korea and Vietnam and right through into Afghanistan. And there's a place to give respite to the soldier, where the soldier can live in the moment and enjoy a pretty girl on stage who's singing or dancing or laugh before they have to worry about the next battle. So what he did all over the world was give these airmen, soldiers, Marines, sailors, everybody, he gave them a moment where they didn't have to think about war. And that was pretty important. And he did it on the home front as well as overseas as well. And during that time, he logged 80,000 miles with his troop of performers. And you think today 80,000 is not a lot, but there weren't passenger jets back then. They were all on propeller planes. So
by bus,
and they weren't pressurized planes. So that was a very hard 80,000 miles in the middle of a world war to go entertain the troops.
Now, you used a word respite. Why that word? You say he was a respite.
No, the respite just in terms of they needed a break. To give someone respite means to give them a break, provide them the opportunity to take a break. And that's what he did during the war, is that he really provided these men and women who were coming off maybe a bad battle or a lot of casualties or something. They just needed to remember America a little bit, and they needed to laugh and just a lot of the times he would entertain Marines in the Pacific, and 2 days later, that Marine would be dead. And like on Peleliu, he was on the island of Pavuvu in the Pacific, and the next 2 days they were going to invade Peleliu, and he knew, looking out at this crowd, that 60% of the people he was entertaining were probably going to be dead or wounded within the next few days. And so that's a hard thing to do as an entertainer, and that really makes you step up.
And not only that, it takes, again, I'm always reiterating that the world of Hollywood, the illusion portion of Hollywood, and the actual world of Hollywood, these people are real people. This is a job, like anybody else that has a 9 to 5 or 10 to 12 or 4 to 2, whatever their hours are, and that they deserve respites, and with that regard. And Bob Hope was certainly one of those people. What I want to talk to you about is that I read that you film in all these different locations that are actually some of the areas that the soldiers fought in. Is that true? Or
we do all of our films. We do all of our films on location. We film them all on location. So if we're doing a film on some Pacific island in that nobody's ever heard of, we go there to Guadalcanal, to Peleliu, to Iwo Jima. Philippine Islands, and then we go places in Europe, all over Europe to film, whether that be at Auschwitz in Poland. So it's important for us when we do these films, to produce these films and air these films, that people have a sense of place, that what this place looked like back then during the archival footage phase of a film to what it looks like now, and how World War II impacted those areas and still impacts them today. So that's important for us. We do a lot of drone filming, a lot of cave filming, and if you don't like bats, don't come on one of our film trips.
Oh, geez.
Or crocodiles.
You guys get out there and get in it. But you're talking about that. Before you came on, I was talking about a lecture that I heard. It was on the word action.
Yeah.
And I would say that veterans definitely, or people in those kind of wars, definitely were action oriented, because action was determined if you lived or died, if you were in the right place or the wrong place. So what I wanted to ask you is, when you are talking to the people that are actually in the documentaries, what are some of the emotions and feelings and things that have come out as they talk about their story and they talk about what they went through? Because the name of it, it's called Memories and Morales. Memories and Morales, and the title, miles, memories. So walking a mile in somebody else's shoes. You know,
it's hard for a lot of them to articulate the things that they went through. And again, I think that's hard for any veteran. I never served, so I would never speak for a veteran, but I will tell you that it's hard for them to articulate the things that they did and they saw, especially to their families. So a lot of veterans would rather open up to a perfect stranger like myself than talk to their family about what they went through. So difficult to get them to open up, but when they do, it all comes flooding out.
It does. I can vouch for that. I'm a vet, and I served, and all of that. And I never told my family anything. Most vets have to get in therapy to be able to open up or do something, because it's just hard, because you can't explain to people that you've been taken out of a home of comfort, security, or whatever the situation is, and put into the situation. Tim, as you know, these people, we're trained to go to war. We're trained to go to war. It's not, you're not on a vacation in a boot camp. You're not out there living in, Hula Googa somewhere about by the ocean. You're being trained for some heavy duty mental resilience that we have to develop.
Yeah. And I mean, it's tough to turn that on and off. So that's the big thing, is you can't just come home and leave it where it was. And especially during World War II, there were no opportunities for veterans to come back and have a diagnosis of PTSD or anything like that. It was more of just, hey, go deal with it yourself. Go have some whiskey or whatever it is. But we started to take much better care of the veterans as we learned from that. But that just wasn't the generation to come home and talk about their feelings. And they've pretty much been true to life right up to the end of their life, right up till they're 99 or 100. They're still reluctant to talk about it. A lot of them have survivor guilt. A lot of them have buddies who are buried in cemeteries all over the world, and they just don't want to relive a lot of the things they went through.
Now, Tim, I know this is a circles around Bob. How did he combine his show and his touring with other performers that were touring, or was it just him alone that carried his part of entertainment?
He traveled. He traveled with a troupe of performers, most notably Jerry Colonna, Francis Langford, Patty Thomas, Tony Romano, who's a great guitar player. That was his troupe. He would come. There would be other events where Bing Crosby would be there, or Mickey Rooney, or other entertainers, especially at the Hollywood Canteen, which was formed to help servicemen and get them some fun before they headed over, especially to the Pacific, where they could go and be served coffee by famous Hollywood stars and dance with Marlene Dietrich and people like that. So, I mean, it was Hollywood was very on board with everything. They were very supportive. And so Bob was obviously had a very aggressive travel schedule. So most of the time he had the same troupe with him, but there would be opportunities for other performers, especially Bing Crosby, to work with Bob on a certain stage, maybe domestically in the United States. But when it came to overseas, that was pretty much his crew.
And then because there were other people, was he the biggest name there? How did it get to be attached to him and nobody else's name was attached to it?
He was doing, he led the troupe, but as far as World War II, nobody did more than Bob Hope did to entertain the troops. And so he kind of became the Pied Piper for Hollywood and for others to get out there and entertain the troops and do other things. Bob just did more than everybody. He just did a lot more than everybody. And he's doing the #1 radio show live on NBC from a camp somewhere in the United States or overseas. And then he comes home and he's making a movie. So he's juggling a lot of chainsaws, but he's doing it all. And he's going out on the road and he's entertaining tens of thousands of America's finest men and women. And it's just incredible. His battery never drained.
I had no idea that Bob Hope had done all of that, because when we look at people on TV or film, we see them in one narrative. We see them as an actor or, whatever they're doing on a television screen or in a movie, but we don't necessarily associate them with like, oh yeah, and he's, deals with the troops, does this and that, and things like that. So yeah. I was very, very happy to hear that he was so involved with veterans. Now, I know that documentaries are not like making a movie. Yes. They're not like, somebody's going to give you all this money and say, oh, yeah, I love the idea of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Yeah. But you want to make something more human. That's why it's a documentary versus a movie, probably. Right. But I want to know, how do you go about what goes on, and how long does it take you to put the documentary together? And then do you take it on a tour? What are some of the nuts and bolts that go on?
You kind of come up with an idea, and that idea is something we always come up with an idea and say, would this idea appeal to a 17-year-old as well as a 60-year-old? Oh. And so we look for films that are different, that tell different stories of the war, not so much about the strategy or anything like that, or dates and times, but more about the 5,000-foot view that men and women experienced during the war. So we kind of go that route, and we just have all these really interesting stories that you don't see in mainstream documentaries, but they're incredible stories, whether it be the Holocaust or whether it be the Tuskegee Airmen, having done a documentary on them, or Japanese Americans who fought for the United States during World War II while their families were in internment camps on the West Coast. I mean, so we just look for different stories that would resonate with a wide demographic.
Do any of your stories involve the families telling their perspective about how it felt to have people away in a war while they were over here worried, half sick, that they may never see their family again?
Yeah, I mean, it's always important to articulate the stress that families were under during that time. And we've interviewed sons and daughters and wives, widows, just a cross section of people. I mean, back then it wasn't like it is today where you can know things instantaneously. Back then it took 3 months for a telegram or a letter to get back to you sometimes. And so there was always that sense of uneasiness and just doubt of how your loved one was doing. So there was a craving of information back then, and anything they could latch onto, they would, because there was just not where you could text people or Facebook them or Instagram them or anything like that. This was old-fashioned, old-school letter writing and Western Union telegrams.
How long have you? Was he involved, Bob Hope? Was he involved with making sure that people's families, their remains, whatever was left of their belongings, were returned to the families, or nothing like that at all?
No, that was the job of the military. They did that. Bob was there to entertain and comfort the people who were in the hospital. They would go into the hospitals and entertain and do all kinds of things. And so that was totally the military's call. He would bring back letters and make some phone calls on behalf of soldiers when he got back to the States, but all that is official government business.
Okay, now the part of it I'm speaking of, which I just want some clarity. The
Sure.
part of it I'm speaking of is that, if he were traveling in an area
Mhm.
and he found out about somebody, did he put a call in and say, look, I just found out Mr. Johnson's son, has not been buried properly. Can you make sure it gets taken care of? Or
Yeah.
was it just the military? He didn't do any of those kind of
Yeah,
things.
he didn't do any of that. That would have been outside his purview, and
Oh, okay.
that would have been official military business. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
But was he ever in situations as an entertainer that his own life was threatened or that
yes.
he was in? What happened there? I see. I didn't know that.
Yeah, his plane early in the war, 1942, his troop made a trip to Alaska, and their plane was almost lost over Alaska. Um, and we cover that in the documentary film. And then the plane also had a crash landing in Australia on water, but thankfully it was a plane that could land on water and take off on water.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, you just think about, again, the travel, especially to the Pacific, they were over water most of the time in these planes that um, had to be refueled often. So
Mhm.
if their plane was ever lost or there was a mechanical failure, they would have gone the way of Amelia Earhart. I mean, they would never have found Bob Hope again and his troop. But
Mhm.
thankfully, Dolores said he was always a little bit of a daredevil. But thankfully, everything worked out, and he had a long and magnificent career entertaining the troops, and of course, in Hollywood and television and every other way.
Oh, like I said, now it being the 80th anniversary
Yeah.
of the end of World War II, what kind of special things are going on around that? Your documentary's hitting it. Did they just start it up in May or what's the plan? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, they started up. In May. We got a couple of films, and then we'll have 4 films done this year. And there's going to be a big remembrance at Pearl Harbor
oh,
uh,
wow.
on
Uh-huh.
September 2nd of this year,
Okay.
because that's where the USS Missouri is now docked, and
Oh,
the final surrender of the Japanese was signed on September 2nd, 1945, in Tokyo Bay aboard the USS Missouri. So they're going to commemorate the actual 80th anniversary on board the Missouri and all over at Pearl Harbor.
and then while you're traveling and these things are going on, are you bringing the documentary to show as viewing while they're sitting?
Yeah, we do that. We bring them along, and sometimes we might have a world premiere or something like that
Mhm.
at Pearl Harbor. So yeah, I mean, we're usually where there are big anniversaries, and fewer veterans, unfortunately, are joining us at those anniversaries, and it's
Why
sad.
is that?
They're just
Why?
aging out. It's just, they're
I
99,
know.
they're 100, some are 105. We just
I
lost.
know.
It's just they're incredible because they want to be there still, but their bodies just have let them down in many ways.
It's a fight. It's a
Yeah, so
fight.
it's always great when you're with them. You just learn how to be humble and learn and see what courage and determination looks like.
I was thinking the other day, if there was something happened where we had to be in a war or something happened, who would be the first people you think they call? Do you think they call veterans dead or alive, to man things? Or what do you think would happen? Would veterans be part of the equation
We've got a very capable military right now, full of incredible young people, and we have the opportunity to speak with them often. And I have full
okay.
faith in this new generation who are already in the military or attending military academies. So yeah, they would rely on people who are in now. I don't think there'll ever be a draft again. So I think the veterans who served have done their part. There will always be some veterans who want to get back into it, whether those are veterans of the war on terror or the Gulf War or just people who had served already. But the majority would be the young people who are running the military now and doing it quite well.
That sounds very promising.
Yeah,
And what is the skill? Like I asked you about funding.
yeah.
I know that can be a little sticky and tricky, especially when you're talking about things like this, humanitarian type things. That's why it's a documentary. But how many hurdles, or have there been many hurdles that you've had to come over just to put this one together? And you've got 42 under your belt, so you're doing a great job.
Well,
finding funding sources.
yeah, you go out and you just try to find people who believe that we need to preserve these stories for future generations. So it's a mix of individuals, corporate support. I just keep going out and asking, and it's like your high school dating career. You ask 100 times, you're finally, you're going to get that girl who says, yes, I'll go to the prom with you after 100 no's. So for me, that prom girl has been American Airlines or FedEx or, TriWest Healthcare or somebody like that. So you just have to know that you have to be synergy. There has to be synergy with an individual who believes in your mission and maybe has a connection to that generation in some way, or a corporate organization that maybe has a connection to that generation in another way.
And Tim, you decided to film versus write. Did you write a book about this, or you decided to film versus writing a book or a novel?
I just do documentary films.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, the book industry is foreign to me, but there have been great books done on Bob Hope, and we've incorporated some of that information into this film.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering why you chose to be on the documentary side versus another author that writes a book about Bob Hope.
I have a TV background. I was in television news for
I've heard, yeah.
And I like to write, and I like to write for film and for TV and for documentaries. So that's where my passion is.
What caused you to switch?
I just got tired of TV news, but I just decided, after 15 years, I was a television sportscaster, and got to cover Michael Jordan and Tiger and Shaquille O'Neal, and it was a lot of fun, but it's not where my passion was. And I always had a passion about World War II, and this is the direction I wanted to go in.
I think that's so beautiful that you had a passion about. Was anyone in your family in World War II? Or
my dad was in at the very end. He didn't serve, more occupation stuff. I had a couple uncles who were in, but I've met so many World War II veterans who are just absolutely incredible. And it just, they're all very, as I said earlier, humble, and they saw a lot. They certainly did.
Oh yeah, when you've seen a couple of legs blown off and your buddy land around, with no, and I don't think people understand, like, again, we're not trained to have a particular mindset when you go into the military. It's not somebody can tell you what's going to happen, because it's hands-on experiences, but it's very interesting when we do have a chance to meet those kind of people, and it touches your heart, doesn't it, Tim?
It does. I just think it's the way they carry themselves. They saved the world, but they didn't want any credit for that. And if anyone deserves to be walking around with a T-shirt that says, I saved the world, look at me, it's them. But they are the anti-reality television generation. They don't want the cameras on them. They don't want the focus on them. They don't care about likes or hits or viral videos or anything like that. They just
want to tell their story.
They just wanted to tell their story or come back and just reunite with their families and get on with their lives.
Well, we're going to take another little break and say something about our sponsor, Kevin Pike of Coldwell Banker. He is a senior probate and a real estate specialist. 818-571-1508. If you want to give him a call, if I were you, I would do just that. Again, he is a senior real estate and probate specialist at Coldwell Banker. His number is 818-571-1508. So now back to our director and 6-time Emmy award-winning Tim Gray. Look at Tim. You're shy too. I noticed the whole time I've been talking to you. You kind of like,
I know. I like to give all the credit to that generation. I'm just a conduit for telling these stories. All the credit goes to the people who won World War II. And so I always feel awkward when I talk about myself, because that whole generation taught me not to talk about myself.
Oh, well, it's okay to talk about yourself. You have my permission. Okay. That's how we have you on here, because without talking about you, we wouldn't know what you were doing, and we wouldn't know about that generation of World War II people. So that has to be two-way mirror on that note. So let's get back into your upcoming documentaries. And is there a tour plan for this documentary?
We just had the premiere in Nashville last week. Gary Sinise hosted it for us. So that was kind of yeah, Lieutenant Dan. That was kind of the world premiere for the film, and so it's out now. But Gary, we had about 100 people in Nashville, which is a small gathering for us, but we wanted to keep it small, and it was just really nice. Gary was the host, and we had veterans there, and Bridgestone was our corporate sponsor. They're based in Nashville. It was great to have them on board. It was just a really nice event all the way around.
And when you go and you travel, do you take the narrators with you? Do they go on the tour?
No, they don't. Usually we just deal with them when the time is right. Yeah.
How long did it take you to put this together, Tim?
It's about a year process from filming. Yeah, filming to getting all the archival to doing everything else. So it's about a year process, editing, writing, editing, everything. So we're usually doing about 4 films a year. So that's a lot. So we're juggling 2 films at once, twice a year. So it's a lot.
And you have those, you said archives. So you have that information, but you have to dig way back to be going back to 1910. And also I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, wasn't Bob Hope a boxer before he got into vaudeville and acting?
Yeah, he did. He was very athletic, and as a young man, and then got the acting bug, and vaudeville was going on, and vaudeville prepared him for being a great radio presence, and everything else, and a great entertainer. Vaudeville is an amazing tool back in the 20s and even the 30s, where it prepared you to be on Broadway, or prepared you to be on the radio, or a movie, or a talented movie star. So his training was amazing that he got during those days of vaudeville.
When you came up with the idea of doing this documentary around Bob Hope, what spurred you on? Was there something going on out there that sparked this interest, or was something you'd been thinking about for a while?
I've just been thinking about different aspects of the war. And how we tell that story, that war wasn't only combat and generals and things like that. There were other aspects of war that resonated and were very important. And the support from Hollywood was one thing, but the miles and the morale and the memories, that was another thing. And that's why we called it that, because the morale is the most important part. And they had to log a lot of miles to bring that morale, and it provided a lot of memories for Bob Hope and his family. And that's kind of what the film tackles.
And when you guys are putting together your scripting and your interviewing and all of that, how big of a team does it require for you to have in order to get all of this done?
It's myself and my my editor and videographer. So I've got one or two people who do all of the filming and the editing, and I take care of all the directing, the writing, and the producing. And that keeps our costs down. So when we do get a donor or a sponsor for our films, we make sure that all the money's reinvested into the project. And
there you go. So you don't really take any.
Yeah, no, we don't have a catering truck or a makeup girl or anything like that.
Or pink dog truck.
We don't have anything like that.
Oh my gosh! Well, that sounds fat. When you're doing this, there was a question I want to ask you. I was looking for it because I couldn't remember it. The foundation. You're the head of the foundation, and what does that involve? Running the foundation for World War II?
That involves finding the money to do all these projects and finding the narrators and getting all the films on television. That's the primary job that I have, and I'm pretty good at delegating the other parts to the other people. So. It's pretty much right now. It's pretty much juggling those films, writing, producing, directing, and fundraising. And fundraising.
And this keeps you busy all year long.
Yeah,
you're able to keep work going all year long, just doing these documentaries.
Yep, absolutely.
Wow. So you're going from one right into the next documentary, or do you break yourself? Yeah,
we're usually doing 2 at a time, and then we jump into another 2 at a time. So, but yeah.
So you have a very challenging situation.
Yeah, I do.
And where don't you live in Ohio, Akron or somewhere?
No, I live up in Rhode Island. So
Oh, you do live in Rhode Island.
yeah, I do live in Rhode
Why
Island.
did I say Akron?
I don't know. It sounds a little like Rhode Island.
It sounds all right. It's okay.
Yeah.
Don't like okay, it sounds nothing like Rhode Island.
Yeah, it sounds a
So
little.
living way up there, do you fly people in or
No,
do
we
you
go to
have to?
them. We go to them. We travel to see them.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
so you guys go out the whole thing. You go out to the people in the talent.
yeah.
Why
We go.
do you pack up
go
your bags and
yeah,
take
we
your own
spend a lot
lunches
of
and
time
your
on the
meat?
road. We're like Bob
Wow.
Hope. We're a lot of miles on the road.
Hmm. So
So
you're not even set up like a normal production company.
we are in a lot of regards. Um, we have all the things a normal production company would have, all the toys and everything. They're just all with one or two people that I work with, and these are people I used to work with in television news back in the day, and they're all extremely talented. And someone once said, "Surround yourself with great people," and I think that's what we've done.
Got to do it. Got to
Yeah,
do it. Great people don't mean money. Great people mean people like you and
and money.
veterans, and people like that and money.
Yeah, yeah,
But the first belief I think is to get the people to believe, and then the money is following because you're believing in your intention and what you want to do.
yeah.
Where do you
We've been
go
doing this for
ahead?
about 20 years now, so
Oh,
it's been difficult to raise money, but it was also difficult to land on Omaha Beach on D-Day or to fly a B-17 during World War II. So
that's all I think.
we always use the lessons of that generation to keep us motivated and say, hey, at least nobody's shooting at us when we're asking for money yet, anyway.
Yeah, I love that because that's how you have to think. You have to have the mindset that, other people had it tough and look what they did, and other
Yeah.
people did. Look at what happened to them. I wanted to ask you, have the tariffs or anything with the new administration affected your level of doing documentaries or gathering, monies and things like that? I think that's really important. I've been asking that lately.
Yes, we've had some donations that were promised to us from some companies, and they decided that they didn't, but once the tariffs came out, that they couldn't afford to make those donations anymore. So, and one of them was a steel company, which got hit with hard tariffs. And
Yeah.
there was another company as well. There's a lot of uncertainty out there right now. And that's going to affect a lot of nonprofits and organizations that need money to keep moving forward. So we have definitely been affected by that. And again, people don't want to, people need to hold money close to the vest at this point, because I just don't think anybody has a clear understanding of what's going to happen over the next 6 months.
What about you going to all these different locations and everything? Has that caused any problems with you guys traveling or flying out of the country? Because
No, we try to avoid Newark Airport.
What?
It's just, there have been some issues. We know that at airports with staffing and things like that, but thankfully, knock on wood, we haven't been affected yet.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So Tim, where can we find out more about Miles Morale and Memories, Bob Hope World War II?
You can just check with your local PBS stations and
Okay.
put the title in and search, and they'll come up and they'll tell you exactly when it's going to air on your local PBS station.
Well, so they're running them all simultaneously?
They run them at different times. Stations run them at different times. So,
Wow.
yeah. And so you just need to check with your local PBS station, but it's gotten about 320 stations so far on board, and that's really great. That's really awesome.
Serious, man. Hey,
Yeah.
you know what? Because everybody's like, look, the vets got it together. They've survived. They're still living. Some of them, they can talk about stories about war in case we have to go into a war. They've got firsthand experience.
Yeah, no veterans like wars. No one who's seen combat, especially in World War II, is pro-war. That's most of them.
No.
Once you've seen actual war, you value diplomacy.
Absolutely. So, do you have any online presence at all?
Yes, just on our website, which is www.iifoundation.org.
Okay.
And you can watch all of our films for free there. And we have a global app called the World War II streaming channel that you can watch as well. All of our films are there for free. We try to make everything. We try to keep everything free for young people and educators.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, but you don't have an IG or anything like that?
Yeah, we have Instagram and Facebook, World War II Foundation.
Okay, so everything is under, for everyone out there that's interested in veterans, World War II Foundation, it's World War II, right?
WWIIFoundation.org.
Okay, wwiifoundation.org. Don't forget about little old me. You can go on IG and get me. I am Osiris_Munir_ the painter. Website expressinabstract.net. And my blog, unkentertainment1.net. Also, people out there, don't forget to smile. It works wonders. I like you. I like you for who you are. And this, like this brave man out here doing what he loves to do, giving humanity something that can live and help us breathe and exist. We don't need another thug story, another gangster story, another drug story, another child in trafficking. We need more stories about people that deserve to be talked about, like these World War II veterans and like this director producer.
Thank you,
Tim Gray. And I love you for being who you are and for being brave enough to watch me every week and to come on and support our wonderful guests like Tim and support their projects and learn all about that. There are people out here doing wonderful things. That's what I love to do, is shed light on people like this that do all of these things from the heart.
Thank you.
Nothing expected except that they get the satisfaction and money in some ways to go along with their heartfelt desires. So don't forget, see you next week. Smile, it works wonders. And a shout out to Sam Hassan, LA Talk Radio, for always letting us shine on our show. Thanks, Sam. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you, Tim Gray, once again. Don't forget, World War
II Foundation.
Foundation.org, and look for Miles Morale and Memories, the Bob Hope World War II on PBS, your local PBS. Shout out to PBS. Thank you for your support. And we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, Tim. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
You are listening to 15 Minutes, the show with Osiris Munir, only on LA Talk Radio.